Hello and welcome to the CWP tutorial. In this video, we'll take a look at the MySQL Manager in Control Web Panel. CWP's MySQL Manager is a convenient place to manage your databases, users, and processes. To access it, just go to the SQL Services submenu here in the left sidebar and select MySQL Manager. Or alternatively, in the navigation field, just type MYS, and that will bring it right to the top. And this opens the MySQL Manager module. Across the top, we have a variety of tabs for databases, users, list permissions, settings, and processes manager. On the right, we have an information panel with your current version and MySQL status, in this case running. Here we also have an icon to restart MySQL. This will generate a warning pop-up that lets you know that you are about to restart MySQL and that this process may take a while to complete, during which CWP admin may stop responding. So confirm you want to continue. And MySQL restarts successfully. Here under the Databases tab, we'll see our database list. If we have many entries, we can expand the table size here. If there's a specific database that we're looking for, we can type it into the field here to narrow the results. Within the table itself, we can sort our databases by name, owner, or users. Under each database name, there's a variety of icons that allow you to optimize the database, check the database, repair the database, or back up the database. And this last one will generate a pop-up that lets you know the location of your backup file and its size. So just go ahead and click Accept. And any databases that have users assigned to them, here we have icons that will allow us to change this user's settings, including their host, to any host or a specific IP, and then we can just input the specific IP. Or we can set a new password, and for that we can use the CWP password generator here. And if you'd like to change the password settings, you can just go to the drop-down and change either the length of this password or the style to alphabetical, alphanumeric, or alphanumerics plus symbols, which would be the strongest. And then you could just generate a new random password, and then you can click again until you get the strength that you like. And then go ahead, copy that to the clipboard, and confirm. Here we can set the user privileges, and we can either select those individually or select all for data or structure. And for resources, we can set the resources on this user. If any of our settings are set for 0, that removes the limits. So here we can set the queries per hour, updates per hour, connections per hour, and user connections. And then just save any changes. We also have an icon here that will allow us to delete this user from right here within the table. So we can just click on that, and we get a confirmation to just remove the user from the database or completely remove the user. So make your selection and select Continue. And then under the Actions column, we can add new users to this database. So to do so, we'll just give our username a name and then assign their host. If it's a specific IP, we can input that here. Set a password. We can use the generator to get a new password. And copy and confirm. And then set the user privileges. And here we can set those individually or an entire category at a time, and then set the resource limits, if any. If instead of adding a brand new user, you want to add an existing user, you can just click the button here, and that opens up a drop-down menu here where you can select the user from your list of users. And then you can assign their host and privileges and resource limits as well. And then save. And also under the Actions column, you can delete the database. And you'll get a confirmation letting you know you're about to remove the database. And just click Continue to confirm. And to add a new database, just click Add New Database here in the top right. And then select the user account from the drop-down menu. And assign a name. And a character set, if any, or just select a default. And your database name will be set as username_database name. And then you can go ahead and save that. Under the Users tab, here you'll see a table with all of your users. And if you have many, you can expand the size of the table. And if you're looking for someone specifically, you can input their username to filter the results. And under the Actions column, we have the same icons we saw earlier. To manage this user, we can change their password using the CWP Password Manager, or completely delete the user. Under the List Permissions tab, you'll see a list of all of your permissions, and you can edit this as necessary. And under the Settings tab, you'll see all the MySQL settings, including max connections, and this is the maximum permitted number of simultaneous client connections, and you can adjust that if necessary, or if you want, just click the reset button to revert back to the default value. Max user connections is the maximum number of simultaneous connections permitted to any given MySQL user account. A value of 0, the default, means no limits. So if you have any limits, just input those here or reset to go back to 0. Max execution time is the execution timeout for select statements in milliseconds. If the value is 0, timeouts are not enabled, and 0 is set as the default. Net write timeout is the number of seconds to wait for a block to be written to a connection before aborting the write. So this is set as a default as 60 seconds. For SQL mode, the MySQL server can operate in different SQL modes and can apply these modes differently for different clients, depending on the value of the SQL mode system variable. Database admins can set the global SQL mode to match site server operating requirements, and each application can set its session SQL mode to its own requirements. Modes affect the SQL syntax MySQL supports and the data validation checks it performs. This makes it easier to use MySQL in different environments and to use MySQL together with other database servers. Listening port is the number of the port on which the server listens for TCP IP connections, by default set to 3306. Bind address. The MySQL server listens on one or more network sockets for the TCP IP connections. Each socket is bound to one address, but it is possible for an address to map onto multiple network interfaces. By default, set to 0. Connect timeout is the number of seconds that the MySQL server waits for a connect packet before responding with bad handshake. The default value is 10 seconds. Foreign key checks. If set to 1, the default, foreign key constraints are checked. If set to 0, foreign key constraints are ignored, with a couple of exceptions. Log error verbosity. This specifies the verbosity for handling events intended for the error log. This variable affects filtering performed by the log filter internal error log filter component, which is enabled by default. And you also have options for level 1 and level 3. Read only. If the read-only system variable is enabled, the server permits no client updates except from users who have the connect admin privilege or the deprecated super privilege. This variable is disabled by default. If you make any changes, be sure to save your settings. If you want to show your MySQL variables, just click Show MySQL Variables here in the top right. And this shows your complete list of variables. We can go back to Settings. And if we wish, we can access the advanced editor here. And here you can directly modify your MySQL settings. Once you're done making any changes, click Save Settings. Under the Processes Manager tab, we can see a complete list of all processes. If we have many, we can expand our entries. And if we're looking for something specific, we can narrow the results in the search field. We can sort the table by ID, user, host, database, command, time, state, info, or progress. In the Actions column, we have a delete icon that will allow us to delete any process. To restart the MySQL Manager, just click the Restart MySQL icon here in the information box. We'll see a confirmation letting us know that in restarting MySQL, the process may take a moment, during which CWP admin may stop responding. So just go ahead and continue to restart. And you'll see your status is now running. And that's how to use the MySQL Manager in CWP. Thank you for using CWP.